Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. And we are probably going to be creating a private Reality Check channel that you can go to, where we can talk more freely than we can here on this network. But we're going to keep this network going too. YouTube is still a vital way to get to people, and it's no matter what you want to say about all the other things, Rumble and Odyssey, YouTube is still the #1 platform out there. So keeping up on YouTube, but also going to start doing more private things where I could talk a little more openly, especially as we're getting into the silly season of American politics, in which everything goes out the window, especially the truth. And so anyway, we're back today with part 3, I think it is, of The Storm Before the Calm with our good buddy, Jonny Enoch. Johnny comes on here. I think like once a year we do these. We did the first one 2 years ago at the dawn of the nightmare. And we were actually before the nightmare started. So I think it was in 2019. I believe almost every single thing that we talked about came true or is in the process of coming true. And I know you guys aren't going to like to hear a lot of this. I call it the great bifurcation. I believe our society is splitting into 2 different groups. One group is going to kind of go back to nature and live out in the country and, grow their own food. And they're going to reject the high-tech culture that is also coming down on us. And I think it's really important. I know most of you are the former, but some of you are also are going to desire this high-tech culture. But I think it's important to have Johnny on to talk about that culture that's emerging. It's coming at us. If you follow Richard Dolan or Jaron Lanier or any of these guys, you know that this thing's coming at us like a freight train, and there's no turning back. So you need to know what's going on. That's what this is about. We're not doing this to piss you off. We're not doing this to scare you. We're not doing this because we're rah-rah-rahing this thing or any of that. We're just 2 guys that kind of know what's going on, and we're imparting that wisdom to you. You can do whatever it is you want with what those words are and what that information is. All right. So, hey, Johnny, how you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me back on, Jay. It's always exciting it's always great to be back. What was that?
Well, we're in very serious times right now, and I'm starting to see odd things happen with, first it was the supply chain falling apart, but now I'm starting to see that that the people are not being able to get vital parts to machinery that it will, put them out of business if they can't get that machinery up and going. And now I'm noticing that people all over the place, not small people, but large corporations, are having a lot of trouble. And this was predicted by us, I think, in the second show that we did, which we talked about the Suez Canal and the ship getting caught there. And you said at the time that this was a test. Corporations like to test things before they go public. And this was a test, and I think it was a test to see what the short-term ramifications of a complete upending of the supply chain would happen. And then they figured out, okay, and then we do this and that and this and that, and they're exacerbating it on a daily basis. So to what end are they doing this? What's the point of destroying the supply chain?
This is a test. That was a test in commerce. We're seeing gigantic changes happening in the economy. And you and I have discussed this at length before about what's coming up with the new centralized digital currencies. And we can get into that momentarily about how that's going to be rolled out and where we're headed with that. But a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in that initial show, even before everything rolled out, that the folks that you and I talk to behind the scenes that give us a heads up so we can prepare and know what's coming, they were telling us about how even those things, let's say by Pfizer, that you get in your arm, that what the true intention with those were. And the true intention, if you go back and listen to our show, is we were explaining to you how DNA works. And DNA has these 4 nitrogenous bases. And when you look at those nitrogenous bases, they work just like binary, 1001. They're a programming language. So something very interesting that vindicated us in the last day, because so many people came out and they said things like, well, that can't be true. The science says that's not possible, that these are contained, they don't change DNA. If you all go look up the latest study that you find, this came out of Sweden. It's called the intracellular reverse transcription of Pfizer BioNTech. And it goes into it about how it's in vitro in human liver cells, that actually in the latest study, it showed reversible hepatic effects in animals that receive this. And it said, furthermore, it showed that it could reverse transcribe into the genome of human cells. So it permanently alters the human genome. And who do we know that's a friend of Klaus Schwab that was talking about the fact that corporations and governments could change at a mass the DNA and genetics, and you no longer own your genetics? Who said that?
That would be Harari, his little lapdog. It's the court. He's like the court genius, I think, is what you might call him. So he sits there and kind of imparts the most incredibly matter of fact manner. It's incredible. But yeah. So what did he say?
It's amazing. And another thing we said, we talked about these transdermal tattoos you have, right? Well, you can already look this up. If you go look up there's certain drugs that need pharmaceutical compliance, as they call them. So one of the drugs you can look up is called Abilify My Sight. And you get these sort of drugs for schizophrenia and different concurrent disorders. Well, that one already has a patch that you wear on your arm, and it essentially uses these things called smart pills. Now, these smart pills, when you take them, once they reach your stomach acid, what happens with these smart pills is that it sends a signal to the patch, which then communicates with your smartphone, and your doctor knows when you've taken a drug. This is already available on the market. It's already being used in North America. It's point blank a reality. Well, if you guys look on routers, this was just a couple of weeks ago. South Korea has now developed a better version of this. They have these nanotech tattoos, and these are absolutely incredible because they're made of these very small particles. They're very small and less invasive, exactly as we told you guys with the transdermal tattoos. And they're right in your skin, and they essentially allow your health to be monitored, your vital statistics. Essentially, this goes part and part with what was just discussed in Davos. In Davos, what was discussed is that no longer do you need to have one of these in the arm, because, I mean, that's old school technology. I mean, they got sprays for the nasals and all that. The latest technology to ensure that these software updates are rolled out properly is you have these smart pills, and they're essentially RNA pills that you would take. That the new thing you're going to be told starting as we roll over into next year is that no longer are we dealing with just one thing. It's not going to be the big C word anymore. There'll be different variants of the C word, but it will be a number of things. You'll have monkey pee in there, and I'm abbreviating these for the algorithms. You'll have, Nipah, you'll have all the latest flus and all that. But again, it will be just as we talked about before. It's going to be zone A, B, and C in the world. You might have a version of this for compliance in North America. You'll have one for Europe, for Asia. And again, this last period that we've just gone through, that was all about getting the infrastructure in place. Now, for those with eyes to see who understand what's going on, these are very carefully mapped out scenarios, not only economically, but otherwise, that are, believe it or not, dictated by an AI. And this might be a lot for people to swallow, but those folks at the WEF, they're taking orders from an AI. We know that there's groups that are using AI like Aladdin right now to gear up the financial markets, right?
Well, so I want to get this straight. So you're saying that run a program for, I guess, how to create the most efficient society, and
Exactly.
the AI figured it out, and they're following what the AI has figured out.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different levels of AI that are in play. And again, I want to reiterate what you said at the beginning of the show, that you and I are just ordinary guys. We talk to extraordinary people, and then we put the puzzle pieces together and we give people a heads up. And for us, I mean, this stuff is alarming when we see it. And you see how fast this is being implemented and where it's coming from. It's really quite incredible. But AI, we have to be very careful with. There are all different uses for AI that are actually really quite alarming. For example, when we looked at those xenobots, those frog eggs that are replicating rapidly, that you have an AI hooked up to, that the AI was able to replicate and structure these things. There's military applications, and this is something that we don't want to alarm people, but AI in the military applications right now, there's AI-driven missiles, that you'll get missiles that can be fired out right now that are AI, and if they see another target that's been destroyed, then that one will hover around right on top of that target. It won't go underneath that one, but it will find the next target that it can do the most destruction from and go down to a milk shed, for example, and decimate it. So the uses for AI right now that are being explored, I think that we need a lot of caution.
Yeah, I think the AI you're describing, that is something that we should be worried about. I'm not really all that concerned about AI gaining sentience, but I am concerned about it. Yeah, it outthinking us, and it can outthink us because it can calculate faster than we can. So, I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So we should be very concerned. The other thing that concerns me about AI is that it's going to start keeping, lists and tabs, like for insurance companies and things. And I would hate to get lost or get misappropriated inside the AI, because I think it's going to be pretty hard to talk the AI out of the idea that they, made a screw up, like Hal in 2001, right? Couldn't believe that he made a screw up.
It already is. And here's where we're headed with this, is that you and I are both fascinated by putting the pieces together of ancient history. And of course, we have some new, classified information about ancient history I want to get into on this show, and ancient civilizations, because it all relates to what you and I have been looking at for so long. But you and I are also futurists. We like to look at the future and see if we can put the puzzle pieces together, because it's fascinating. But as we see this coming together, another thing that we discussed in our previous shows that you brought up at the beginning is where we are headed with this new financial system, this new economic system, and all these things that are going to play a part. I don't want to alarm people, but I want to get in today to what's been happening with the war. We have to be very careful talking about that and some of the things that are going to transcend out of that, and how that relates to what we said on previous shows. But we also want to talk about different events that will happen because of this. For example, what you're being prepared to look at right now is a lot about different submarine activity under the water, and how there could be nuclear fallout, as well as there are events that could be leading up to an event that you would look at, well, let's say underwater activity causing a tsunami hitting certain areas, let's say in the UK or on the East Coast. And these are things that we have to be prepared for. And there are a lot of drones operating in this world right now. And so when you get certain events like that and things that are happening, we don't want to get into a place of fear. We want to stay in a love and a knowing that the universe is working perfectly in harmony with where we need to be. But at the same time, the events that we're being prepared for right now, as you mentioned, some of these drills in commerce and supply chain issues, and what's backed up is that we're headed very quickly for an economic collapse of mass proportions. And this is something, again, you and I have discussed at length. It's nothing to be fearful, but it is an engineered situation that has all been predicted. It's all been laid out. And again, this is something I do believe where an AI that's as powerful as these systems could very strategically look at the steps that are being taken. And what will happen is when you see a collapse like this, in this next couple of years, you will see this new financial system with the centralized digital currencies rolled out very quickly. And part of that is going to be like a social credit system, as you and I have discussed. And there's going to be different classes to this social credit system. And again, we talked about that on our show. Going back, you and I have been discussing this since 2019, that when you do this, it's going to be like the Chinese social credit system. If you cut someone off in traffic over there, this affects you. If you want to have a family moving forward, if you have people in a world where there's a lot of sterility and infertility, that is a side effect of a genomic modification program in the next 5 years. If you wanted to have a family, you would have to apply for this, kind of like a credit score. And if you wanted to be able to travel and have certain opportunities, this is all connected to this. And when this rolls out, people won't be very happy. I can't imagine that anybody's going to be happy when the centralized digital currency systems roll out. But how they will roll out, Jay, and I will say this, I believe it's going to roll out very, very quickly as a solution to a mass amount of problems building up all at once. And it will literally be a reset, to quote those folks that we were discussing.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is you're going to wake up and a certain percentage of the money you have in the bank is going to be transferred over into the centralized currency. And everybody, it's going to happen all at the same time, probably on a Sunday, I would think. Be a good time to do it. And then you're not going to get as much. It's going to look like you probably got the same exact amount that you had in the old currency, but in reality, it's not going to be as much. Just face it, it's not. And then what's going to happen is cash will be outlawed, and this is where we're going. And then every single thing you buy goes into the AI, and the AI then determines, well, Johnny, you're eating too much fat. You're not allowed to buy any more burgers for the rest of the month. Johnny, your thermostat is way too high. You're going to have to turn it down. In fact, we'll turn it down for you. And this is what it's going to be. And you're going to be completely under the auspices. There won't be any more crime. I mean, if there's no cash, and it's going to be pretty hard for criminals to make any money, and so crime will essentially disappear. I don't know how you're going to. We could create underground markets, but I don't know how you're going to get around it.
Everything in the world that we're moving towards is going to be monitored by AI. And It already is. People don't realize that even the algorithm that we're using to talk right now on here, to YouTube, to our phones. That's right. That's right. You take a picture. It's all machine learning in that respect. But the way that your medical is going to move, I mean, you're going to have these particles through your body, as people don't realize the extent of this technology that's already been implemented. But you're going to have, as we go along, the monitoring your vital statistics, your organs, everything will be reported back to your phone through the transdermal tattoos. And this also is going to be monitoring, everything that's what's going on inside of your body. There's a surveillance going on there, but all around you as well. And
they can kill you if they want to too. Right.
That would be what I believe you'll see down the road. You're going to see that this whole compliancy with even, your lifespan and all that is going to be dependent on this, because we've talked about foglets before, foglets unlocking your mitochondria. Everyone's body is going to be filled with foglets that is a part of this system. And before we leave this financial system topic, because there's more to explore with this, according to my insider folks that I talk to with this, they tell me that right now, what you've seen this transition, even with the crypto markets, as we mentioned, a crypto crash on the previous show, we said the crypto crash was coming. What was coming after that? And we also said that when cryptos went up, remember what we said, if you go back and listen to us, we said that the fossil fuels and those dollars would go up. And we also talked in our previous show, we said exactly, we told you guys what was going to happen with Russia and the Ukraine. And we said then a little while later that China and Taiwan would start acting up. Well, what you'll see is that the cryptos are going to go up a little bit more again. And that's what I've been told is supposed to happen with them, because there's more of an organized chaos than that than you would know. So that is going to go up a little bit more again. And so if you were going to get some, this next little bit might be the time you'd want to do it. But then they're going to be very cleverly regulated and then absorbed back. There will be a time period where they'll be bought back, and there'll be like a 60% at that point. But what's going to happen with oil as well is that will come down as well when the sanctions are lifted. And so you'll see that drop dramatically in the next little while. So a lot of this is also contingent on what you just saw, what happened over in the Ukraine, right? And when this event just took place in the Ukraine, we saw a lot of very interesting things. First of all, with Russia going in there, the ruble actually did very well because of that. It went up, and it's very unfortunate because where I live most of the time, and right now I'm over here doing some traveling. I'm actually in North America, but I live in Budapest. We live right next door to where the action is in the war. We have a lot of Ukrainians who are really wonderful people. We have them there, and it's very sad to hear their stories. It really is. But what happened over there in this tragedy is that we saw Russia taking a lot of what they had, their oil and everything. They would just sell it to China, then China would sell it back to everyone else at a premium price. Or you take certain countries that were taking it from them and just flipping it. So there was an exchange of goods in the water. And where I believe you're going to see this go by the end of this year, you see this war right now is being dragged out. It's being dragged out because obviously the military industrial complex and everyone like that benefits on those levels. There's certain economic changes that happen from that. But where you will see this go is that I believe that you'll see things calm down in Donbass. There'll be a settlement in Crimea. And what will happen is that Putin will step into the background by the end of the year. And the reason he'll do that is because I'm told by my friends in intelligence that he really isn't well. And for him, he will just sort of retire into the background because his name is kind of soiled now for international trade. But after that, sanctions can be removed for a while. But this is not the end of what just happened. Remember, esoteric teaching tells us to go back to the very first cause of the universe. Plato and Pythagoras told us to close our eyes at the end of the day and go back to all the causes during the day on how the ripple effect took place. There is a ripple effect here that you're seeing. So as we've told you guys before, there's a 5-year transfer over of what will happen because of this, not only across Eastern Europe, that's going to split East and West in the different economic markets we're going to see within Asia, within, what's happening in India, China, Malaysia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, all these places. There's going to be a huge changeover between these two markets. But what you will see also in this transfer over in the world is that we're going to see a lot of ups and downs over the next 15 years. You're going to see conflicts in certain areas. Remember, Russia has a $2 trillion war budget, and none of this is by accident. There is a great transfer over there. There's a great change happening, and it's very disconcerting. There'll be incredible ups for us, I'm told, Jay, but there's going to be some downs that are absolutely like a roller coaster. And be prepared for these shocking changes that are coming in the world. Even by 2024, I'm told you won't recognize the world.
Well, I follow a guy, Peter Zion. He's a global analyst, and he says that The real problem that we face right now is demographics, and that Russia is going to die out here within the next 20 years. Their demographics are completely going south on them. China is the same thing. The majority of the Chinese people are over 50 years old. Their one-child policy destroyed their ability to repopulate. And so they're also have a demographic time bomb that's going to happen. And oddly enough, the one country that doesn't have the demographic time bomb is the United States. We actually had kids, and so we have a fervent generation coming in, and they're having kids too. So he says that the world is going to break into that the globalism is going to fragment, and there's going to be realliances. So Mexico and Canada and North America and the United States are going to form into an alliance, a giant, which we know is going to happen for sure. Denver is going to be the capital, and
Yes.
and it'll be Mexican labor, Canadian resources, and it'll be managed by the United States. So it's going to go, and we're going to see all this. But the big problem, he says, is, and Elon Musk is also bringing this up, and it's something I'm actually concerned about, because first off, I think what you're saying is pretty much a done deal. But there's always, the law of unintended consequences. And if we we know that the death rate over the last 2 years has gone up quite a bit. Insurance companies are about to declare the act of God, and they can't make the payments for life insurance because so many people are dying. Mortuaries all over the United States are reporting, maximum business going on. And so we know there's a death rate. I know right here in my own area, there's been a lot of people that have died over the last 2 years, and not just of the big C, just all sorts of strange stuff, accidents and heart attacks, and just not one thing that's doing it. But I fear that the high-tech economy that they're advocating and definitely working towards cannot function without a highly literate, well-educated workforce. I mean, everything breaks down. The law of entropy, everything breaks down. All of their machines are going to need a human intervention. And that person is going to have to really know their stuff, as you know. I mean, we're going to have to know the programming languages or how the chips work. And it's not, in other words, the skill of an engineer. And I wonder if they've thought that out far enough that we could have such a population fall that we're not going to be able to have enough people to maintain the high-tech society. For instance, just running an airline takes a lot of people, right? And you can't run it all on its own, and there'll never be electric airplanes, never. So I don't know, and that's the one thing I am concerned about, is that they've made a mistake with depopulation. We know, we've said it on the show, that they're going to depopulate the world. We've said that, 3 years ago, whatever it was, the first time you came on, 2019. So we know that that's one of the goals. What I'm saying is, can they balance that so that they can keep their high-tech society and enough well-educated people to run it? Have they thought about that?
I think that you raised some good points. Obviously, there's been a lot of consequences due to these biogenetic technologies that have been rolled out. And let's just say, when you go to, remember back in the day when we used to have these DOS and Windows computers, that you'd go buy some software from the store, you go to run your software. But if you had a PC, that you'd go to run the software and it didn't run the same on everyone's PC. And it's the same as us. We all have a unique neurophysiology and biodiversity to us. It's not all going to run the same. So if there is a casual sense, and I hear what you're saying, that there's these consequences to that obviously it's not going to take out the whole, but most certainly we're seeing that there are some dramatic consequences to these things. But with what we also see I've been told about some extraordinary things that are held back from our knowledge that are going on behind the scenes. So, for example, some of the technology is just incredible. That we have the ability, as I mentioned before, we have the ability within your smartphone, for example, that you could take the smartphone and you could have it so that it would run for 10,000 years on a single charge.
Yeah,
And that might sound like a pie in the sky claim, but I
no,
want
no,
you
no,
all
that's
right now, go
yeah.
look this up right now. Google this right now. Nanocarbon diamond batteries. We have the
No, no,
technology. We can use radioactive waste for this. We can do it right now, and they are using it. It's already a classified
oh
technology.
no, it's a done
Uh,
deal. They've
yeah,
got batteries that could. They've got a battery the size of a shoebox that could power your house forever, for
yes.
like 100 years
The wet cell
on
battery
one
is one of the
charge. I'm saying on
exactly
one charge that it
exactly.
can power it.
We've been held back with the wet cell battery over 150 years. It's one of the one pieces of technology, if you look it up, that you've been held back on, and it's been done intentionally. Now, the other thing is that a lot of people don't realize this because they're so put out in the dark about it. But the very wealthy folks on this planet, and I have this on a very good authority, that the very wealthy folks on this planet, they regularly enjoy foods on their plates and fruits that are extraordinary. They give them the maximum amount of nutrients. They have flavors and tastes that you've never even tasted. Like even if you go look up the articles about the Royals, look about the very particular source of mangoes and fruits. These foods that they're consuming are not grown here. They're grown from up there. And you might just be getting a little bit of this in the news now that we're planning on opening up space stations to grow all these things. Well, there's a whole lot of that going on up there, as well as there's private contractors that have claims in the asteroid belt. You have all kinds of exotic materials coming from there, and you might ask yourself, how are they getting here? Well, if any of you have ever looked up Diego Garcia, for example, in the Indian Ocean over by the small area of Mauritius, outside of Diego Garcia, a lot of people sometimes trip out about it. It's just a cargo dropping station, and there's several of these. But when the cargo gets dropped there, it gets unloaded, and then there's an underwater rail system that's very quickly that will take it even over to Australia or other places, and it takes the cargo from out of there. And there's also these other drop-off spots in the Pacific and in the Atlantic. Even look up some of them by SpaceX, and you can look up the other ones that are doing this. But the private contractors are doing this, and they're doing all kinds of things with exotic materials. And there's all sorts of stuff that you've never been told about, that's so out of people's grasp of reach that we are already living in a very futuristic world. So there are some architects that are literally taking our society right now and what we know, our genetics, our financial systems, and it's going to be very concerning when the next 2 years hits and people say, oh, this would never happen. And you see the rollout of these centralized digital currencies, and you see the class system and how it's put out. And you see that essentially there is a system there that didn't come overnight. This was very well planned.
Definitely. I call it Project X. It's been going on since at least Napoleon. And it probably came out of the alchemical milieu in France, I would think. When the de Medicis translated all the Arabic texts, all the Hermetic texts, France became like the hot spot for all of this. And then Napoleon comes out of that, and then he begins financing all sorts of interesting operations, and they've culminated into exactly what you're talking about. It's all comes out of France, Switzerland, Germany, and the UK. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're growing food up in low Earth orbit. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Absolutely, Jay. And, this is not the end of these changes, though. We're not getting too politicized here and what we're talking about, but I do believe that as active as, let's say, the UK was in the news under Boris, that you're going to see the UK actually is downsizing their military, but you're going to see Japan is actually militarizing more. That's what you're going to
Yes, they
witness
are.
a lot. There's going to be a lot of NATO concerns when we look over at China, Turkey, Israel, what's happening in these particular areas. Again, Turkey has 1.5 million in their army. They're a force to be reckoned with. But Israel has
And
a very serious underwater defense system. So there is a lot of stuff that's transpiring. But all in all, I want to say that as crazy as all of this stuff is to be happening at once, and for all of us to be here during this time, you have to look from a spiritual perspective, that why you as a soul with your consciousness, with you right now that's here, why did you choose to come here at this time? This is a very pivotal time for humanity, that something is changing, something is transpiring. We are also entering a very amazing future, but these no doubt are strange times.
yeah, well, there's so many different things. Like I want to, like I'm constantly talking about the law of unintended consequences, and I hope that they're going to roll out these batteries that you're talking about soon, because the electric cars are not going to be able to haul stuff and all that. They're just not going to be able to. So if they're going to need a brand new technology for the electric cars to actually be functional. So they're building us towards a future, and they I believe you're right. It's all been thought out, and that soon they're going to start releasing these solid state batteries, and we'll get rid of the liquid batteries, and then we'll be in a different world. But until then, we're kind of screwed on the energy front.
Absolutely. But when we bring this big picture together, there's a lot of other stuff that comes together with this technocratic society we're moving into. There's a point where we're almost seeing again the merging of spirituality and science, and of course the two of them should never be apart anyhow. The two of them go part and parcel. But you're hearing a lot of guys like Elon Musk talking about the fact that he's already downloaded himself, and he said he's not worried about what happens if anything happens to him, because there's a version of him already. And there's a lot of folks out there, including him, that will say that consciousness, for example, is created in the brain. It's a local phenomena. And we actually saw some recent studies came out. I believe it was by Catalina Corsuno in Italy, that was looking at these quantum gravitational waves. And she was looking at the idea that this would, I guess, dispute the original theories that were put out by Penrose and Hameroff on quantum consciousness. Although it doesn't dispute the more complex models of it, that consciousness is coming into the brain as a receiver with microtubules. But currently these folks that we see, these very smart individuals, they believe that their current model, we could download our consciousness, and whether we are like the show Upload, that we are going to be able to put ourselves into a quantum computer, or a world that we could interact with after death. I believe that that's more of an NPC on a computer game, that is like AI taking your life and evolving you based on what your behavioral patterns have been. I think it's eventually we'll call that like a holographic memory or an interactive memory. I think that's where that will go. I think it's so primitive at this position that the holy grail of that technology that we'll see eventually will be called the transpositioning of consciousness, where we'll be able to triangulate your consciousness, your EEG rhythms, which are unique to you, and bring them into another body or another system. I do think that not only will humanity move towards that, but Jay, I don't know what you think about this, but I almost think, as scary as transhumanism sounds, and none of us like it, eventually I think it's inevitable that our descendants in the future will have a convergence of biology and technology, and you'll see these sort of micro tissues that are like programmable matter that could change form, like a consciousness-driven biology. Do you think that we're eventually going to see a convergence of humanities and technology?
Well, I think that that's certainly where they're going. I'm not sure it's going to work. It might. we're really one solar flash away from it all collapsing, though. That's the other problem. The Cross of Henday
Starting to-
definitely warns us that that's going to happen. So, you know, I think it's inevitable that that's where they're going. I think that they have a program that's been thought out very, very carefully, and that we're going down that program no matter what. And I think every single thing that happens is part of that. I mean, we just learned that Bill Gates was behind the new Inflation Reduction Act that they passed, right? Why is Bill Gates behind it? Because Bill Gates is one of the technocrats that's working all of this out. And so he needed to have that bill passed for certain events to occur as a ramification of that bill being passed, and including 90,000 IRS agents, which is very interesting. Because if you take the digital currency and you couple that with 90,000 IRS agents, you've got total control, right? I mean, because they can tax you if you say the wrong thing, or, you know, they'll audit your taxes if you say things in public that you're not supposed to say, or whatever, right?
That's it. I mean, but what we have to realize again, when we look at the world of causality or causal mechanics, is that everything that's happening here is connected to everything, not only inside of us, but around the universe. The universe is a great symphonic construct. It works on parasympathetic harmonies. There's an oscillation of not only thoughts and events, and I believe what's unfolding here is greatly connected to the greater evolution of all of us. It's greater evolution of the whole. So no matter what happens here eventually, I really want to just remind people again that this transcendence that we're all going through, this journey, that no matter how strange it is, no matter how many technology gets thrown at us, or super beings, or you know, people say whether it's the reptilians or the grays, there's some kind of beings that are here. All in all, we are evolving with the whole, and you know, there's nothing that can take that part away from you or us or any of us. And so I don't think we should move into these times with any kind of fear. But Jay, what I believe shows like this do is help people to prepare, to know what's coming. So whatever direction they're going to go into, they know ahead of time.
This is Jay Weidner, Reality Check, and we're starting a membership plan for content that we don't normally want to put up on some of these platforms, and I want you to join. We're not going to stop doing the regular shows. We're just adding content. Be a lot more one-on-one stuff with me, and I think you guys will find it really interesting. So we'll put it up here below how you can get into the membership plan, and please join. I'm Jay Weidner, and thanks for watching.